Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, after a disastrous dumpster fire of a loss in sales from the first game out there, it looks like Sony PlayStation is out there cutting its losses with the Spider-Man 2 game out there. Yes, boys and girls, the Sweet Baby Ink infected game out there that made the gorgeous and absolutely stunning Mary Jane from the comics look like something you would pick up after way too many beers at the end of the night at the bar. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, the game out there that gave you the forced mission out there where you had to spray paint propaganda on a wall has, guess what, is not getting any future DLC, ladies and gentlemen. And when you see the sales numbers out there compared to the first game, you'll understand why, because this game turned into a disastrous dumpster for Sony, did not meet their sales expectations by a long shot, and now there is no future for any more content coming from this game in any way, shape, or form. And it's honestly probably Sony's smartest decision they've made in a long time. So we're going to share this article from thatparkplace.com, getting all of the juicy details and see exactly the reasons why Sony is not going to be giving any kind of DLC for this game out there going forward. But before we do, if you do enjoy our content, hit that like button, share it with all your friends, and subscribe or follow if you have not already, boys and girls, because we are grinding, we are growing, and I could not do that without every single one of you. Also, leave us a comment in the section down below. Does it surprise you at all? Did you enjoy the Spider-Man 2 game, even despite all of the other kind of crazy nonsense and kind of injection stuff out there? I know a lot of people did really enjoy this game and still had a good time with it, despite all of the nonsense. And come on, boys and girls, shout out to all the modders out there. They're going to make Mary Jane great again in this game. Shout out to all of them. So let us know what you think about all this in the comment section down below. Also, if you'd like to help support the channel, please check out the links in the description as well. So, all right, from thatparkplace.com and our dear sweet John F. Trent once again. After sales were over 50% worse, half, ladies and gentlemen, than Marvel's Spider-Man, Insomniac reveals Spider-Man 2's PC release has no additional story content planned. And why would it? You've already had a bunch of your employees laid off from inside of Insomniac because PlayStation essentially was admitting that this game was a flop and did not meet their expectations. And that's how it goes. Can't justify having those over bloated budgets when a game doesn't make anywhere near what it needs to and doesn't even come close to making as many sales as the first one from the same company. Me wonders why that was. Maybe it was all the previews. Maybe we saw the uglification of Mary Jane. Maybe it was because we heard about the fact that Peter Parker was going to get beat down and replaced by Miles Morales at the end of the story. I wonder why as many people didn't buy this game as they did the first one. Insomniac Games announced that there is no additional story content planned for the Marvel Spider-Man 2 ahead of the game's one-year anniversary since it released. In a blog post on Marvel.com, it was announced that Marvel's Spider-Man 2 will arrive on PC on January 30th, 2025. The PC version of the game is being developed by Dutch developer Nixxes in a collaboration with Insomniac Games, PlayStation, and Marvel Games. Color us shocked there. That all makes sense. Oh, now modders, they're going to fix Mary Jane. Now Nexus, you be nice and you leave them boys alone and you let them do their mods, you little jackwagons. On top of announcing the PC version of the game, the blog post also revealed that Insomniac Games does not plan to release any new story content for the game. While we have no additional story content planned for Marvel Spider-Man 2, yeah, means it's not going to happen. I guarantee you they did have plans at one point. They were probably on the drawing board and they got scrapped after the abysmal sales. We're delighted to bring all of our previously released post-launch content to the PC version, including new game plus, new suits, color variants, photo mode features, and more. Yay! A bunch of extras that probably should have been included in the game initially. This announcement comes in the wake of Sony revealing that Marvel's Spider-Man 2 sold less than half of what Marvel's Spider-Man did. In a recent Sony financial report for its games and network services segment, a slide featuring Marvel's Spider-Man 2 claims, "Great success for a major PlayStation Studios game series and category." It also revealed the game only sold over 11 million units. Now, of course, Sony is going to try to spin this in their earnings report because that's who they're giving to their investors, and they want their investors freaking out about this game out there. Plus, they already fired a bunch of people that were responsible involved in this game's disaster. Notice they don't put in and compare it to the first game's number in their financial report. I wonder why. Oh, we know why. With 11 million units sold, that might seem like a great success. One can only view it as a massive failure given Sony's sales data that leaked to Reset Era at the end of 2023 revealed that the 2018 game's Marvel's Spider-Man sold 22.685 million units and had a net sales total of $827 million. And trust me, that was back when the game's budgets weren't $500 million for every AAA studio game that comes out these days. They actually made a profit on that one. What do you want to bet this new modern one with all of the consulting from Sweet Baby Inc. that had to be paid for probably was a little closer to the $500 million mark? Even the 2020's Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales game, which was literally nothing more than like a 5-hour like extra little thing that they sold at full price, mind you, that should have been nothing more than a $15 or $20 DLC, sold 11.12.5 million copies and had net sales totaling $427 million. So they essentially made like $1.3, $1.2 billion off that game when they all probably only spent like maybe $300 million at the most on that game, and probably much less considering the era that it was made in. To provide some color, they talk about all of this other kind of stuff. They want to talk about Ant-Man. They want to talk about the box office. But anybody can understand the basics of a 50% decline, right? If every time you sold something, every time you made something and you continued to produce, and this was your job, if every time you did that, if you continued to lose half of your customer base every single time, how long before you have no customers left at all? Ask Rings of Power, boys and girls who have lost 50% of your audience. Yeah, guess what? That dog doesn't hunt. And it's exactly why Insomniac had massive amounts of layoffs. It was because of the failure of this game. A 50% loss is not the direction that you want to continue going forward. So of course, they're not going to invest any additional money on top of the hundreds of millions of dollars that they've already wasted on this game. If indeed this number matches up, right? If the leaks are to be believed, which there's no reason for them not to be whatsoever, right? That means this game selling 11 million units is a hugely drastic thing. That's 50%. That means it's made half. So if the first one was $827 million total, that means this one has barely cracked over $400 million. And considering the reports we've heard from these AAA, I mean, hell, they spent $500 million on Concord. Ladies and gentlemen, how much do you think they spent on Spider-Man 2? There is no way you can argue in any way, shape, or form that this game is not a financial disaster for Sony PlayStation. And guess what? This is what you get when you hire Sweet Baby Inc. as your consulting firm. This is pathetic. So again, 11 million units sold is clearly a significant number of sales. However, given the fact that the first game sold 22 and Miles Morales sold 11, one would have expected the sequel to potentially have sold even more units than the first game, or at least have only a marginal drop. Instead, the units sold dropped by over 50%. That is definitely not a great success and is more like a big disappointment. And this is how it goes on out there. They talk about all of the layoffs. They talk about how this is going to happen to go on with Naughty Dog and everybody else, that they're doing massive layoffs and all of this kind of stuff going on. They talk about the fact that obviously we already talked about the fact that Sweet Baby Inc. was very much involved in this game. It was part of one of the consulting firms on this. They're responsible for, of course, the woke side mission out there. We have to spray paint propaganda out there on the side of the wall. And then, of course, also the ugly fine of Mary Jane, because trust me, anybody that sees that character in the game does not think they're going to hit the jackpot tiger in any way, shape, or form. They go on to talk about how God of War Ragnarok was nothing more than a big problem as well when it came to all of this kind of stuff. And this is what happens. They can laud it as a success. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of people out there in my comments freaking out and melting down going, no, the game was a success. No, the game was fabulous. It was wonderful. I loved it and I enjoyed it. Fine. You enjoyed it. You loved it. You had a good time with the game. You didn't mind the woke side mission. You didn't mind the really fugly Mary Jane Watson that they gave you in the game. Fine. By all means, you enjoyed that Miles Morales is going to replace Peter Parker as Spider-Man in the game going forward. Although, considering this flop, it's probably not going to happen. But what you cannot deny that losing half of your audience, losing a half of your customers, losing a half of your gamers from one game to the next is an undeniable flop. It is a failure. It is a disaster. That's why Sony laid off a bunch of employees responsible for this game, and that's why there is no DLC coming. Spider-Man 2 was a flop. This is what happens when you decide to insert your agenda and listen to people like Sweet Baby Inc. when it comes to your video game. The audiences have awakened to your bullshit. They sniff it out and they don't buy anything anymore without somebody else looking at it first and telling them the truth. Because they know they can't trust you, they know you're a miserable failure, and they know your only agenda is forcing your political views inside of the video games. And guess what? Nobody wants it. And Sony, PlayStation, and Insomniac, and everybody else involved with this game, you have lost half your audience. You have lost half your sales. And there is no way to deny that is a disastrous dumpster fire. And guess what? You did it to yourselves, and you're getting exactly what you deserve.